I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today we're going to make a quilt called Stars and Four Patches. This is a free pattern and it comes with Moda's Fat Quarter Bundle. Every color comes with its own pattern. Here's the taupe one, and here's the pattern that came in the blue bundle. Each of these bundles has 12 fat quarters, so you can use any of the free patterns for any color bundle. We have this pattern free on our website. Go to Free Patterns, and it's right here. So grab your pattern and a fat quarter bundle, and let's get started. First thing we're going to do, we're going to open the bundle and see what kind of greens are in here. I know they're all green, but I like to know dark, light, lime green. There's nothing really dark in here. They're mostly nice and bright. Now this one comes with one free pattern. So that pattern it comes with looks like that, but we're not going to do that pattern. We can use that on, we'll use this on a future quilt. We are going to be doing the stars and patches. So the greens we've got here, they're all medium greens, and any of them are going to look good in any spot of the quilt. I like to iron the fat quarters nice and flat because then my cutting will be much more accurate. So I'm going to open it up, smooth it out, and use lots of steam. Now I've got 8 of the fat quarters in this stack and 4 of the fat quarters here. The cutting is pretty easy. So we're going to cut these 8 all exactly the same, and all the numbers are on the pattern. There's a lot of numbers, but easy cutting. So I recommend print this off, and then you've got it right next to you when you cut, and you won't make a mistake. I like to use a weight to hold down the far end of my plastic ruler. It really does stabilize it and keep it from moving as you cut up here. All the cutting on this green fabric is all done, and here's what we need. We have some 3-inch squares, some 3-inch strips, we have some 5.5s and some 6.25-inch squares, and now we just need a nice bright background. And I think I'm going to use this really stark white because I think the bright greens will look really good on this nice white background. All the patchwork pieces are cut out. We're going to start sewing with these 3-inch strips. We're going to sew these side by side. So we're going to take one of the whites, and then we're going to put a green on top, and we're going to use a 1/4-inch seam, and we're going to stitch along the long edge here. And I'm just going to grab the next 2 pieces, and I'm going to string piece these, so I'm not even taking that off of the machine. I'm just going to grab the next 2 and stitch those on as well. Once you have them all stitched, just pull the whole string back, whoops, and we are going to open this up, and we are going to finger press this seam towards the dark, towards the green. So I'm just gently opening it up and drawing my fingernail, or you can draw the pad of your finger right down that seam, and that makes it very easy to iron. Even though they're all finger pressed, that's not quite flat enough. It's best if you iron these. So they're laying really flat and straight, and I'm going to iron it. No steam, and then a little steam. Now these strip units are going to get subcut, and I like to cut them in bulk. You can do them one at a time if you like, but I like to layer them up. I will put them on my cutting board about 1 inch apart. It's easy to see where the inch is because we've got lines there. And I will stack up 4 or 5 of these, and then I can cut through all of them at the same time. Now the reason these are offset a little bit is so that it's not too thick in any one spot, and so that these seams don't line up, because the seams can get hard to cut through. So I'm going to cut these 3 inches wide. Now we're going to take 2 different colors, and we're going to put them right sides together and we're going to stitch them back together. So we're going to match this seam in the middle. It's pretty easy because the seam allowances are going in opposite directions, and stitch it together. I'm going to keep doing that until I have 48 of these units. Now we just need to iron these flat. We're going to open it up. I always like to pat it in place first, then use that steam. Now we're going to work on the quarter square triangle units. So we're going to take these big squares. We're going to take all of the white ones and we're going to draw a diagonal line right across the back. I like to use a sharp pencil and just do a very light line, but there's chalk pencils, there's a lot of marking tools that will work. So mark all of these light ones. To make the quarter square triangles, the first step is to make half square triangles. So we make half square triangles for a lot of patterns. What we have to do is put the light right on top of the dark. And then we're going to stitch 1/4 inch away from the line on both sides. I'm just going to spin it around and sew down the other side. Now take your half square triangle units here, cut right along that line. It's the same line that we drew on. Then we'll take these to the ironing board and we'll iron them flat with the seam going towards the dark side. To iron these squares, I always start with the light on the bottom and then I peel it open and press with my hands so that this seam stays straight and does not bow, and these corners go the way that I want them to go. Then grab the iron and then steam it. Now we're going to take these units over to a hard surface and we are going to take 2 different colors, put them right sides together, white on the green, green on the white, and I'm going to draw in the opposite direction of my sewing. I'm going to draw another line right across the diagonal. Now we're going to use the same procedure. We're going to sew on both sides of that line. So we need to make sure everything is lined up. And then we want these seams to nest right here. You can feel it. It's hard for me to show you on the camera, but I can feel if they're right up next to each other. Everything's lined up, so I'm going to just stitch down here. And then just stitch down the other side. Now we're just going to cut along that drawn line. And look at how cool these blocks are. These are my latest favorite block. I just love them. So we're going to iron these up and we're going to trim off all those dog ears. Now I have all the parts and pieces to make some of the bigger blocks. So we're going to take 4 of these 4-patch units and 4 of these quarter square triangle units and 1 center square, and we're going to lay out the block. This guy goes in the middle. These 4 go around it, and they have the light up against the middle every time, the white rather, up against the middle every time. The 4 patches get the dark towards that center square. And you don't have to be real picky about what goes where. You just have to make sure they're laid out this way. Now we're just going to sew the rows together. To sew the block together, I like to keep the pieces right here, and I'm going to flip these over and stitch down there. And I'm not going to remove the pieces from the sewing machine. I'm just going to keep them attached with the strings. Leave that there and grab the next piece. Don't spin it, just keep it right facing the same way that it was there. Now I'm going to leave everything together here. Slide that over slightly. We're just going to open this up and we're going to flip this right sides down and put it right on top. This is a real easy way to make sure that you don't get any of the blocks mixed up. Now we're going to finger press our seam allowances. So we are going to finger press everything away from these quarter square triangle blocks. So you've got a quarter square triangle block. The seam allowances are going to go away from those everywhere you see them. So here's a quarter square triangle. The seam allowance is going to go away from it, and again here away from it. Now we're going to sew these seams. So if we flip this over, when we line this up, the seam allowances will all be going in opposite directions and nesting. It makes it real easy to get everything to match. Now to get my intersections matched here, I'm probably going to snip that little bit of stitching there. And I'm going to take a pin, a straight pin, and I'm going to poke it right at that spot, right where that point is. And I'm going to take the pin and aim it right here where I want to match. I want everything to match there. And I'm going to slide everything down on that pin, and I'm going to hold it in place as I sew. And I'm going to head right for where that pin is going in. I want to stitch right over that, but I'm going to move the pin right before I get to it. That usually makes that intersection line up very nicely. Now we are going to finger press again away from that unit there. Now we can see how closely we got this matched. This one is just about perfect. This one here, it's not as perfect. The line is pretty straight, but this one is not perfect right there. It's good enough for me. I am not that picky. So if it bothers you, you would want to take that out and fix it now. I know it's not going to bother me. So I'm going to go ahead and finger press this one, get it ironed up, and make the rest of the blocks. Now that these main blocks are done, we just need to make a few more almost exactly the same, except we're going to put some of the solid white fabrics in the corners. We're going to make some of these, then we're going to make a few blocks with 3 solid whites in the corners. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of those blocks stitched up really quick. The blocks are all stitched up. They're so much fun to make, and now we're starting to get a really good look at what this quilt is going to look like with these different blocks laid out. So I'm going to keep laying these out. Now these are the blocks that have more of the white on the outside. These have white on the outside. In here, there's all of the blocks that have the 4 blocks. And we're going to put sashing between. We're going to put cornerstones in every corner. And then that will make the pattern of these squares continue on. So I'm going to lay it out, stitch the rows together, all the rows into a big quilt, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Now that the quilt is done, you can see the secondary pattern popping out. I can see the stars, and now I can see the little bit of stair steps that's made by using those 4 patches. That goes throughout the quilt. I just love it when there's a secondary pattern that shows up. Now the greens, it was a nice blend of greens, and when you put them with that white, they just shine on there and they look really, really fresh. I used a simple quilting pattern. It's called Wiggle Weave, and that way it didn't take away from any of the patchwork. It's a nice solid green on the back. The quilt turned out 72 by 90, so that's a pretty big twin size quilt. I used the solid binding on it, and I think that frames it really well. It's got that simple white border around it, and the patchwork is kind of floating in there. Really fun to make. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on how to make the stars and 4-patch quilt. We really hope you enjoyed it. Now be sure to keep sending me pictures of your quilts. I love to see them. Happy quilting!